Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 96 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined in person by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hey, hello there, college football fans and Husker fans.
Yes. I am here in Arizona visiting my folks for the Thanksgiving holidays.
Yes, we are recording live, actually, on the actual day of Thanksgiving.
That's true. This is Thanksgiving Day podcast. And we'll plan on doing our next episode after the upcoming Iowa game for Nebraska. We'll be doing that in person as well.
So yes, that's kind of
nice.
cool.
So for those of you listening out there who may not be regular listeners to the podcast, this is College Football Throwdown. We are a father-son duo doing a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. And we're here to talk about the national stage, but mostly our team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, that we love so much. And on this week's episode, we will be diving into the game against Illinois, as well as the other big games that happened this weekend. There are actually quite a few upsets that are worth noting. Those of you who listened to our episode 95 would know that we gave our predictions on how we thought that the game was going to go. And we were both feeling good after that Penn State victory, you know, that Nebraska and Scott Frost had kind of gotten something going together. And you predicted, or rather I predicted, that we would beat Illinois 31-21, and you gave two scores, 42-21 victory or 42-38 victory. I think you were basing that off of thinking that they were going to use their second-team quarterback,
right,
the guy who ran for a bunch of yards in their previous game,
right,
and whether we would assign a guy to, you know, hold the box for him or not,
right,
like if our defense would make that adjustment.
Right.
Unfortunately, neither of our predictions turned out to be right because Illinois kind of flipped that score. Your score, 42-21, that's pretty close to how it was the opposite way.
Yeah.
41-23 victory for Illinois.
Sad.
Yes, sad day.
Very
for
disappointing.
Husker Nation.
Yes.
Fortunately.
Very disappointing. One thing we historically do is try to crack open a beer, but in our excitement about being together and as the holiday, and as it were, we inadvertently opened our beverages a little too soon, Alex. So
yes.
I want to just quickly say today I'm drinking a Shell's Firebrick Vienna-style amber lager. I've spoken about this beer before. It's from August Shell Brewing Company in New Ulm, Minnesota, the second oldest brewery in America, and it's a very fine amber type of lager. Cheers to you, son. Here we go.
All right.
We'll clink cans.
I picked up at all. And I'm just drinking a Sprite because it's 10 a.m. and my dad's chugging down a beer, but I guess it's Thanksgiving morning, right?
Exactly.
There we go. All right.
Always time for a good amber.
Never a bad time, huh?
That's right.
Was it? It's always 9 o'clock somewhere or whatever.
5 o'clock, not 9 o'clock.
5 o'clock. There you go. It was something like that. Okay. One interesting thing, if looking at the stats for this game, is that they seem to be a little bit closer than you would expect for given how lopsided the score was. For example, both teams had 25 first downs, and they had 490 total offense, whereas we had 392. So, you know, they had 100 more, but it's not too crazy. But of course, one of the key stats to look at is that both teams had 4 fumbles, but they recovered all of theirs, whereas we only recovered 2 of ours. Right. And so we ended up having a total of 5 turnovers over the course of the game, one of which came literally on the first play.
Right. And was a wrong call, but was not reviewed.
Yes. That got us off to a bad start, clearly, because it gave them an easy score. And at the very least, it should have been reviewed for such an important turnover so early, and it seemed like it was on the edge of whether that was a forward pass or not. So they really should have taken a closer look, I think.
Right. And since this is being broadcast or recorded rather later in the week than we normally would, the interesting thing is when asked about it, the coaches at Nebraska indicated that they felt they were told by the referees that they were going to get a review, which is why they didn't call a timeout. They thought it was going to get reviewed, so they didn't aggressively go and stop the game to kind of forced the question because they
Well,
claim they were told, and the ref said we never intended to review it because we didn't have the right angle. Now, how they determine that so quickly, and frankly, we watched replays from the broadcast booth on the broadcast itself, and I think 2 of those replays showed very clearly that based on where the quarterback was, motion of his arm, the path of the pass, it was clearly a forward pass and should have been an incompletion. And why that is so important, Alex, and because there's not much to break down about this game other than Nebraska played like shit pretty much across the board, and a lot of the burden falls on the coaches because of mistakes like the one we just described about not calling a timeout at that point. The mistake in terms of some of the other critical plays. A lot of it comes back to coaching, but the bottom line is that play encapsulates what is wrong with our team right now, which is we have no confidence. Any negative plays, any bad news, so to speak, causes us to fall apart. We have no mental dedication and toughness to sustain through adversity and then lead to a win. We need to do that. And until our team sees that, both in practice and in games, we're going to continue down this path. And that's where, all these people that go back through the years, one of the reasons I always argue why Coach Schneider down at Kansas State was able to develop a winner from a program that had been historically one of the worst programs in the entire country for like a decade, right? And then Schneider comes in there and turns the thing around. Well, how does he do it? He plays patsies. He plays patsies and allows his team to experience wins and success. And then over time, slowly started getting better and better, getting better recruits, getting better coaches, et cetera, et cetera. And he put together a winner. And then, was playing, he knew he had big boys in his league that he would eventually be able to compare himself against. So there was no need to go out in non-conference and play big boys when you knew you were going to see a few every year in your conference, right? So play the lesser schools, win a lot of those games, get yourself to bowl games, ensure yourself the extra practice and the winning confidence, right? I think that is critical to the formula. The problem Nebraska's had is they have not taken advantage of those opportunities when they've been presented over the last decade since they joined the Big Ten. And then once they get into Big Ten conference play, our Big Ten conference schedule over time has been substantially sprinkled with major players, right? Good teams. And so we've never been able to get over that edge, over that hump. And so my argument would be, and the problem is the next 4 or 5 years do not portend this at all because our schedules are going to continue to be very tough. So having a stretch of easy games is not in our future. But frankly, we need some of those games to build confidence and then climb that hill.
Right. Well, and to your earlier point, what you were saying about us not being able to get that confidence and how we fall apart once things start going badly. I saw a sign that there was some difference in this current team from last week's game, or the Penn State game.
The Penn State game, right?
Right, because we were the offense was throwing the game away, in Penn State's favor, and the defense managed to hold it down and stop them from scoring, twice back to back there in the fourth quarter, which I think did show that resilience.
Right.
And honestly, once again, I mean, when the offense turns the ball over 5 times, like no defense is going to be able to overcome that.
I totally agree.
So, I obviously I have issues with how we played defensively because they were able to get a lot of things going against us. But my concerns at this moment are more so on the offensive side because we did get some success, going on drives, or, for example, would have receivers open, and then McCaffrey would throw to them and either just totally miss the mark or just wouldn't have the arm strength to get there. Like you might remember that one later on in the game where he went deep and the guy was open, but his ball was so lofty that it slowed way down, and so their guy was able to easily get in there and intercept it.
Right, exactly. He was open, and if someone had put that on a rope, That's a big play. But because he didn't have the arm strength to get it there, the safety was able to easily come over and just jump in front of it and pick it off.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. And last week, I should say the Penn State victory would have been a stepping stone in the direction that I'm talking about, building that confidence of mental toughness. But you have to then follow that up with another good week and more success, and then just build off of that, right? And that was the hope and the expectation. Now, the fact that our culture still isn't good enough for our players to recognize the need to do that, because there is acknowledgement this week also that they didn't have a good week of practice, that they were resting on their laurels, so to speak, that they did not put in the focus and effort in preparation for Illinois. They genuinely thought they were going to beat Illinois comfortably.
Right.
And that, I don't give a damn if you think you're going to beat somebody by 4 touchdowns. You still go 100% every play of practice or whatever.
Right. And I know, the different odds makers and things were, bringing us up by quite a few points, but those players, and I know the coaches hopefully were aware of the fact that they had players coming back from COVID and injury, and this Illinois team that we played is more complete than they've been the whole season. And it showed. They played their first team quarterback, not the second team guy who did all the running that we were talking about on the previous podcast. And he was able to execute some nice throws and run it when he had to. He clearly wasn't that fast, but he got the job done against us.
Absolutely.
And they, credit to their coaches, they came in with a good game plan, and we couldn't make the adjustments that we really needed to at halftime, because it was already looking bad at that point. And then near the end of the third quarter, when we were Wandale was running it, and I remember distinctly in an earlier run, I think, where we got a touchdown. That was the biggest play we had of the game, where Wandale had a 30-yard run,
right?
And they were trying to strip the ball from him, and he held on tight, and powered through it. And I was like, all right, nice job,
right?
But then at that end of the third quarter, he coughs the ball up. Right when we, that was the point where we needed to get a touchdown there to stay in the game, and we cough up the ball. I was like, okay, I'm done watching. So I didn't watch the fourth quarter. I know we scored 1 touchdown and went for 2 and didn't get it.
Right.
But the game was pretty much over at that point.
Absolutely. That's just and that's the thing. And credit Illinois here that they played extremely well, way better than they had looked previously in the season, and their coaches had things very well prepared. That's the thing that's most frustrating to me is the
coaching.
The coaching, the fact that it just seems like our team is not as prepared. Like the punt that was not a fake punt, but that got them a first down anyway. That was not a fake punt. That was a punter simply assessing the situation and having the green light from his coaches because they trusted him, and that they had obviously prepared and practiced enough punting in practice to know the circumstances and have coached through that. He didn't do that unilaterally on his own. I guarantee you that was discussed, and he was given a green light to be looking for that situation and to seize it if it came, and he did it.
Yeah.
And that was a backbreaker. That was a huge point, in my opinion, in the game.
So it was going to be a 3 and out.
Yeah.
And then that drive ended up, I forget if they
touchdown.
Was it a touchdown?
Yeah. Or no, I think it was just a field goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
right.
I think it was a field goal.
I think we did stop.
But and I remember that point too, because earlier we had been rushing guys on the punt. I had taken note of that. Mm-hmm. But that particular one, there was nobody to stop him.
Right. So it's those kinds of details, that make for a well-coached team or a poorly coached team, and it's the simple stuff. It's the same stuff that high school coaches review, right? And the fact that as a collegiate program you don't have that in place is a problem. Now, breaking down that particular play, you need to understand that there is one person assigned to spy the punter and make sure he punts. They figured that out on their film assessment. They said, okay, we just have to block this guy. If we block this guy, everyone else can turn around and run. So the spy got blocked. Well, that's why you have to have more than one spy. You have to change up who your spies are so that you can't, in film study, get figured out that easily by the opponent, right? You have to change that up. That's something we did in high school, We understood that you had to do that. How could Nebraska not understand that and not be prepared for that?
Yep.
That's crap.
Yep.
And that's the kind of stuff that we need to have from our coaches that we're not getting.
Yep, absolutely true. And one other thing that we discussed, because we were texting back and forth during the game, is at halftime, after McCaffrey had clearly he was still having some good runs, as you'd expect from him, but not having success with his arm at all, really not being there mentally. So we discussed, what if should we bring Adrian in? And we both kind of thought, yeah, give him a shot. Luke's struggling, so give Adrian a shot. But McCaffrey came out in the start of the second half, and on our first drive where we had possession, he had a nice drive where we scored points. So I was feeling, okay, maybe McCaffrey can turn this around for us. But after that drive, it was back to the same old stuff.
Right.
So for this upcoming game against Iowa, if you're Coach Frost, who are you starting as quarterback?
Oh, I'm going back to Adrian.
Yeah?
And here's why. Not because I like doing the bouncing quarterback, but if you listen to Coach Frost, he has said throughout this whole thing that it's an open competition. And he's never really identified either one as the permanent starter since, even when Adrian got the first start in the first game, it was clear that he was hedging his bets, right? So I believe that he still views it as those two being co-starters. And I think the last game hopefully gave him indications and something he's probably been seeing in practice, and why he had been hesitant to turn the keys over to McCaffrey is because McCaffrey's arm strength simply is not there to get done what needs to be done. Now, the accuracy of Adrian Martinez's stronger arm is also unacceptably poor. And so effectively, we don't have either one of those are good enough quarterback-wise to execute the offense the way Scott wants it done. Right now, he's probably more frustrated than any of us that he hasn't seen Adrian mature and develop and improve as a quarterback to the point where now in his third year as our starter, that he isn't a much more polished and accurate quarterback within our system. He still rushes himself. He's still nervous, so he's got issues. Now, McCaffrey seemed to play with greater poise and confidence, but you can see his physical limitations as a passer, both from the standpoint of the physical part of throwing it, but also the decision-making part, right? The progressions and things of that nature.
Right.
Because he's threw some passes that were not well advised.
The mental part of it, some of that could be chalked up to him being a redshirt freshman. He's still learning the system. He wasn't expected to be the starter right out the gate.
Right.
So I can forgive some of that. On the point about his physical arm, how much of that, do you think, because obviously he can get stronger, he can get better at that over the course of, his career at Nebraska.
Absolutely.
But is it one of those things where he'll never be good enough to be, where we want him to be in terms of being able to threaten the deep pass?
Right. I think he can get better, but he'll never be exceptional at that.
Right.
And frankly, that goes back to, we recruited him as a quarterback because that's what he wanted, right? Because other teams were recruiting him also, but they were recruiting him as an athlete / wide receiver, and we were the ones that were going to give him the shot to play quarterback. And Scott has been consistent in saying that Luke is here as a quarterback. And we used him, of course, with great success last year as a receiver and a running back even a little bit, right? And then early games this year.
Yeah.
And to me, that might be the role that he most benefits the team, because we want him out there running the football with that speed and his elusiveness. He's pretty good. We want him out there, right? We don't have enough talent not to utilize him at least some of the time. But I think we need to go back to Adrian, and we just have to, work with Adrian to try to improve his accuracy and his decision making so that he makes decisions quicker, gets more comfortable, and throws with better mechanics so that he can be more consistently accurate.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think Adrian should start this upcoming Iowa game, and my hope is that these couple games he's had off now,
right,
has given him a moment to pause and kind of self-reflect a bit. That's my hope, but it's kind of a long shot.
Right, exactly. Well, and my question is, we also have a third string quarterback by the name of Smothers, who is a true freshman, came in early. It was a big, huge hit to him to not have spring practice. If Smothers had spring practice and had those 15 extra practices, he might have been quite a bit further along for fall camp and been able to truly be in the competition. Because if his arm and accuracy are superior to that of the two guys competing now, he would be absolutely a legitimate option for us to use, because he is also a very good athlete and can run the football and has a tradition in his high school performance that he can run the football. But he had some injuries late in his high school season, when his senior year, and then missing spring practice put him so far behind that, frankly, we would be throwing to the wolves if we did that. So that's why he's really not an option we want to go to unless we're forced to by injuries.
Right.
So.
Gotcha. All right. So looking at the games from Week 13, we predicted one of them in terms of our scores, which is that Indiana-Ohio State game, a very important game in the Big Ten. I predicted that Ohio State would win, but that it would be close, 42-38, whereas you predicted a little bit less close, but still close, of 35-28. And the final score for that game ended up being 35 Indiana, 42 Ohio State. So it was a 7-point game, like you said, but it was a little bit higher scoring, like I said. So we were both a little bit right there.
Yes.
And Ohio State ended up winning. But what's significant is that I didn't watch the game, but I had the score play-by-play pulled up in on ESPN during our game.
Yes.
And it was 28-7 by halftime, with some turnovers on both sides, as I recall. It hadn't been a super clean game.
Yeah.
But Indiana clearly made some good halftime adjustments, kind of rallied back, and I don't know if they were ever within the point of where they're actually in threat of tying the game, because they were really they had a long hill to climb.
Right.
Back up.
They definitely caught back up, but again, it was one of those things where, again, for the first half of the game, Ohio State, even with the turnover, was still outclassing them pretty significantly. And what is the Achilles heel of Ohio State, and has been for years, has been their tendency to go to sleep, for lack of a better term. Just getting bored because there's just not enough competition sometimes, and they can kind of just lose it, right? And then teams that are inferior to them kind of catch up. That's one element of their weakness. The other one would be to just have bad things happen from the very beginning and the wheels just come off completely, which has happened to them in recent years as well, where a team ends up blowing them out, right?
Right.
And that's the only loss they have the whole year. They right the ship and away they go. Well, Indiana, because it's a team with great confidence, right? We talked about confidence early in this podcast and the critical nature of it, and they have a quarterback who's competent. It just shows how very, very critical having a good quarterback for your system is to football. Well, we're going to cover some other teams, I think, that will touch on that same subject.
Yeah, well, I think the good transition for that topic is that Michigan-Rutgers game, which in a normal year you would expect Michigan to crush Rutgers, but it turned out to be a 48-42 shootout that went into triple overtime.
Right.
And Michigan was losing that game until they swapped in their new quarterback.
Right. And again, they're struggling to find a quarterback who can execute their system at a decent level. They don't have to be all conference, all Americans, but you got to at least be able to execute. And see, Nebraska's still struggling to find a quarterback who's complete. I mean, for 20 years. I mean, seriously, when was the last quarterback who was complete? Even the Martinez, Taylor Martinez, for example, was an incredible athlete, but had inferiority in his passing.
I mean, the last one I can think of is
Armstrong was also
Zach Taylor back to the Callahan days.
Exactly. That's exactly who I was thinking of.
He could pass the ball pretty good. He wasn't nearly the athlete that some of the other ones were, but it was good enough.
Great decision maker, and he wasn't a super strong quarterback, although he did get on with a NFL team and be able to play a little bit and make a squad, but he never He never was a starter.
Right.
And now he's a head coach in the NFL, or was. So he's a guy that obviously has done very well.
Yeah. So pretty bad that you have to go back 15 years to talk about that quarterback.
Exactly. And it'll be interesting to see. Michigan now has Penn State this weekend, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm almost certain they're going to go with that backup as their starter, and bench Milton, and that's going to be interesting in terms of the dynamic for the team, because he was going to be their future, right? Because he's a strong-armed, big-bodied, athletic guy, and now they're putting him on the shelf for more back to a more traditional, not as athletic, tall, thrower. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah, and on that point, Penn State played against our upcoming opponent in Week 13 of the season against Iowa, and they lost pretty badly, 21-41. So they're going into that Michigan game having 0 wins on their plate. So both Penn State and Michigan, not having the seasons that they want. But we think that with this quarterback adjustment, Michigan will have the upper hand in that particular game. What did you see from Iowa in that game against Penn State that has you thinking about our upcoming game with them?
Iowa, after struggling early in the year and losing their first 2 games, has righted the ship, has established a running game, classic Iowa football, and they looked great. In fact, I would say that Penn State game was the most complete game that Iowa had played the whole season. And so that's not a good place for us to be as Nebraska fans going into a game where Iowa is clearly playing at a way higher level than us. And so you can expect a game very much like the Illinois game, in that Illinois didn't make very many mistakes. Their wide receivers, not only were they getting open, but they were catching the ball when the ball was thrown to them, and the ball was being thrown accurately. Okay? So all aspects of their offense were working well. Now, Illinois didn't have a great defense, but was able to make us one-dimensional because we simply can't throw it deep. And even an average defense can shut down an offense that's one-dimensional. Iowa is way better defensively than Illinois,
right,
and has a similar efficient offense. So it's going to be a very difficult challenge for Nebraska to do that. The one thing I would say, though, on Nebraska's favor is Illinois had some big and just strong wide receivers, right? And they had not played to their potential before the Nebraska game. Then they emerged in that Nebraska game as real talents, right? And everybody knew they had the talent, they just hadn't put it all together with their quarterback. Well, they did against us. So the question is, can we match up better with Iowa's wide receivers and tight ends than we did with Illinois'? Because I think the quarterbacks of those 2 teams, Illinois and Iowa, are similar. Efficient. You can expect them to make good decisions. They're going to be able to run the ball effectively enough to punish you with first downs if you don't contain them, even though they're not going to be running wild, athletic, runners.
Right.
But they're going to get it done. So the question then becomes, can we match up with those wide receivers and as a result slow them down, and by virtue of doing that, be able to put people in the box so we can stop the running game?
Indeed, that is the big question.
It is.
Another interesting game in the Big Ten that I think we talked about briefly was Wisconsin versus Northwestern. At the time, I believe I said that I thought, Wisconsin's going to control that game easy, because they had just come off a dominant win over Michigan. But actually, Northwestern ended up winning that game 17-7, in big part because Wisconsin turned the ball over. I
think it was 5 times.
Yeah.
5 total turnovers.
Right, yeah. And a lot, like, one after the other. It seemed like in the first half, it was a lot in succession. And then just, good defense being played on both sides. Like, clearly, Wisconsin's defense stopped Northwestern a bunch.
Right.
They only scored, 17 points.
Right.
But not a great look for Wisconsin. Do you think that was a situation of them kind of sleeping at the wheel a little bit?
Well, yes, but also it's about the turnover thing, right? And there are certain teams in our league, Illinois being one of them, is already reputable and well known for stripping the ball and producing turnovers. They have led the country or led the conference, and in some cases been very high in the rankings in the country on turnovers margin, right? And they're just known for that, right? And then I would say that Northwestern is right behind them in that category, right? Yeah. They are just super disciplined, and their technique is very well coached, and so you could just pretty much count on the fact that their whole defensive scheme is built on the idea that during the course of a game they're going to get some turnovers, and they do, and that's what they did to slow Wisconsin down. So was it Wisconsin not being as prepared? Maybe a little, but I don't think that was the big factor. I think the biggest factor is just Northwestern is so disciplined and good on defense, and then now their offense is solid enough to make you pay.
Right.
Last year they had a very good defense, but just couldn't put any points on the board. If their life depended on it, kind of thing. And this year they've got more offense. That's what's made them turn the corner.
Yep, that's true. And then in the Big 12, there was Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma. I think you predicted Oklahoma would win. I went for the upset, saying Oklahoma State would pull it out. But that did not turn out to be true. Oklahoma won that comfortably, 41-13. So now I'm pretty sure it's Oklahoma and Iowa State, ironically, that are like the top contenders right now in the Big 12, which leads us nicely into the games this weekend, where probably the biggest one is Iowa State versus Texas. So basically, Iowa State is in control of their own destiny. They play Texas, and then they play West Virginia after that. If they win both those games, then they're like the top dog in the Big 12.
Right. Now the question is, are they going to have a Big 12 championship? And if they do, then who's ever number 2, i.e. Oklahoma, ends up, let's say they end up number 2, Oklahoma does. Well, then they get to play Iowa State again in the conference championship game, and they will beat them. So I'm going to tell you right now, Oklahoma is going to be the Big 12 champion, regardless of what happens this week with Iowa State and Texas.
Okay. That may well be true. But in terms of this game, I didn't look up where it was. I don't know which stadium it's in.
That's a great question.
But I personally would love to see Iowa State pull it out, of course, because, well, we all hate Texas here as Nebraska fans, so that's no surprise to anybody. But also, I know they've, at our time in the Big 12, Iowa State was consistently one of the worst teams. But they've been slowly improving, like over the time we've been in the Big 10. I've seen them, kind of building up their program, getting better. So to see them kind of turn the corner this year would be good to see, I think.
I totally agree. And, yeah, they have a great coach who they're going to probably struggle to hold on to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the challenge for them, I'm afraid.
Right. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. We mentioned Penn State, Michigan, the two struggling teams in the Big 10. And then, of course, we have Alabama-Auburn, classic rivalry game.
Can I make one comment? It is at Texas.
Okay. Well, so that makes it a bit harder.
Yes, it does.
But, yeah, the Alabama-Auburn game, what's the name of the rivalry?
The Iron Bowl.
Iron Bowl, that's what I thought. Auburn is ranked 22nd, whereas Alabama is ranked 1st. So based on that, you would say Alabama should win pretty comfortably, but we know that Auburn seems to always come to play in that Iron Bowl.
That is true. That is absolutely true. Although I'm going to say this is one of the years where the differential is great enough in the talent and the execution level that unless Alabama comes into this game in some way not prepared, and because there is not a crowd to the extent that there normally would be, the home field either way is less of a factor. I just think playing in a sandlot on the side with not many people watching, Alabama wins 9 out of 10 times, and so
yeah. I will say I read something that apparently Nick Saban tested positive for COVID again.
Again?
Yeah. And, of course, I think they're going to do more tests, of course, to see if it was a false positive like last time. But if he is not able to be in the game, that could be the opening that Auburn needs. to find a chink in their armor, as you say.
Right. Well, that could be, but oh God, would you not like to be the guy who's testing Nick Saban? Because if he ends up getting 2 false positives, he's going to strangle the person who takes his tests, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. That I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that.
I want to be a fly on the wall for that one.
But going to predictions now, that Iowa State-Texas game, obviously, I think you think because of that home field advantage that Texas is going to pull it out.
And Texas is 4-2 also, so they would end up tying. And so you would end up with Iowa State at 6-2. If Iowa State loses and Texas wins, then you're going to end up with Texas, Oklahoma. Texas, Oklahoma State. All in the mix, right?
Right.
And who's going to be 1 and who's going to be 2 is going to be an interesting thing how they do the tiebreakers and stuff. But I believe that if Oklahoma wins out, they will be in that top 2 solidly. And then Iowa State, even if they lost this week, would still be in the mix and may end up number 2, but because of the head-to-head, maybe not. Maybe they end up, and it ends up being an Oklahoma-Texas Big 12 championship game, which frankly would be more interesting, I think, more competitive, not more interesting, but more competitive than, just because of talent, than Iowa State. But I want so desperately for Iowa State to find a way to win. So I'm going to predict, even though I think Texas wins because it's at home for Texas, home field doesn't matter as much this year, I'm going to say Iowa State because they are just so damn well coached. But it's going to be tight. It'll be one of those games that'll be classic Big 12, high scoring. So I'm going to say it's going to be 42 Iowa State, 35 Texas.
Okay. I also have faith in the Hawkeyes to...
Not Hawkeyes.
Oh.
Cyclones.
There we go. Cyclones to pull something out. So I'm going to go ahead and predict that Iowa State will win as well. I'll go a little bit higher scoring. I'll go ahead and say 49. Well, maybe not 49. Let's go 45. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the numbers. Yeah, because 42. Yeah, so 45 makes sense. So 45 Iowa State, and we'll say 42 Texas. There'll be a field goal difference.
Okay. Yep. Well, you got Hawkeye on your brain, by the way, because that's who we play.
Oh, all right. Well, that's the score we're going to predict next.
Oh, shit.
Is that Iowa game. I'm going to go ahead and be hopeful and say that we go with Adrian and that he has made some mental adjustments, hopefully, to himself. And so we're able to compete, at least for a while. But to your point about how effective their offense proved to be against Penn State, I just don't feel we'll be able to hang with them for 4 full quarters. So I'm going to predict that Iowa wins. I'll go ahead and say it'll be 35-24.
Okay. Now you put me in a predicament because I also think Iowa's going to win, and I think it could be a blowout. Okay, but I so desperately want Nebraska to win that I struggle with admitting what I want to admit. But I guess, I'm going to throw my heart away for a little bit here, and I'm going to try to be the objective guy that says, you know what, until Nebraska can prove it, I just can't, I can't give you a prediction that says they're going to win. So I'm going to say that a little bit like some previous years where we kind of hang with them for a while till halftime, then don't make appropriate adjustments. Then Iowa comes out and runs the football about 25 out of 30 times in the second half and just beats us to a pulp and ends up winning 42-21.
All right. Well, we'll see who is more correct at our next podcast, which, like I said earlier, we'll be doing in person. We may have a special guest on. We'll see how that goes. Thank you all out there for listening to this episode of College Football Throwdown. You can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Give us a rating or review. We always love hearing from the fans. So thank you all very much out there for listening, and thank you for co-hosting with me today, Dad.
This was fun.
This was fun. And we're hoping for a Nebraska W over our rival, Iowa, in the
Yes.
Big Ten. Yes. So hopefully we'll be coming back with good news here in a few days. And everybody enjoy Thanksgiving. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.